Greetings. Hello. Hopefully the microphone is working. Oh, yeah, there it is. So for today, we are going to read, we are at page 222. Auspicious. I think the meaning of 222 is new beginnings or union or whatever. I don't know. I guess that one kind of like can just do. There's like Google. There's Google. So yeah. So we're in the sixth hub right now, which is about intuition, which is to a certain extent use of like historical pattern recognition and ideation, which is, if done really well, is using the same materials of like these kind of bits of information to create new things. So I think I asked in the last reading or one of the last ones, like, what's the difference between intuition and ideation? And that's my answer, not the final answer. It's my answer, is that these are the same sort of like atomic material that we're using, which is just inputs of experience. And that, and I guess I'll just repeat it, is that intuition is using the past in terms of the previous experiences to predict the future. And in a lot of ways, AI functions in this way. And this is interesting because right now with AI, there's a lot of discussion about like what is intelligence. And so AI is predictive models using, so it's like, it's a database. It's interesting. It's actually a great like allegory, analogy, whatever, which is amassing information to create and then to predict likelihoods. And as a result, and then it's like, and it's training itself. But so as you can see, like this kind of notion of like pattern recognition is because it needs to actually have existed the pattern needs to have happened in some way in the past. The ideation is we're looking into the future and trying to see new combinations that are new, that don't make sense, right? Like it's finding new intersections that an algorithm that's looking for likelihoods would not necessarily find. So using AI as an analogy. So part of vision, I mean, one good example of this is like you look at this, you look at the skyline of a city, and it's really uncommon that buildings are built like very differently. In some cities they are, but in general, you have kind of a tower of glass right now is kind of the style of the day. And it's kind of boring to talk about like why. I mean, it just has to do with funding and risk aversion. And look, look, here I go anyway. And doing things, to get the money to do it, there needs to be sort of a sense that it will work. So the risk of doing something unproven, once again, we even get into our own understanding of ourselves, is that things that have context and things that we have previous exposure to on some level, whether it's subconscious or otherwise, have a greater likelihood of our nervous system being able to regulate And so this goes back to, Parinama for Beginners. We talk about this, and even a lot of what we're working with here in Parinama is nervous system regulation, which is related to imagineering our way into new futures, which is like by the sort of nervous system notion is going to activate the sense of danger because it is an unknown in like really. So in the sixth hub, here we've got like here primarily in terms of like what we like the physical location. We've got like was it like 13 to 17 approximately, but as we've discussed, the ages of this are like they become a lot more sort of ephemeral and expansive. Yeah, in a way. I mean, there's certainly the matter of the development of the nervous system functions that support this, and certainly the matter of the interruptions and stressors that will be impacting the development of the capacity of this hub in its first pass. And, I don't know, I can't remember if it's in here, but it probably is. But when we talk about interruptions and stressors for the fifth, sixth, and seventh hub, I'd be remiss not to point out that the interruptions and stressors are going to could even just be, what we're talking about, like the sort of the debt, the backlog of the previous hubs. So it's not feeling safe, not having, like having limited emotional capacity or emotional awareness, sense of self, of an individuated self, of individual identity, and feeling confident in that, and belonging, feeling safe and belonging. And, one of the things is there's a lot of talk about unconditional love. Like you hear that, people unconditional love. And that the notion of that, right? Um, I've mentioned this before, I'll mention it again, is just the impossibleness of this notion that someone should love you without condition when you're an adult, which is, it's a callback to having needed this at some point, really like very, in this like very specific period of our development and not receiving it because the hunger should just be loved for who you are. That it's not, we do need to hold people accountable as adults for how they make us feel, their standards about like how they're living, and like even, you know, maybe it's like I love you no matter what, but like this kind of notion of like cherished adoration is unconditional love. Maybe it's more the unconditional love. It's like I love you, but I'm going to need to, protect myself from this kind of thing. But the unconditional love is a love, as adults. It's an inside job, and one of the things we'd want to look at is like housing that. If we experienced it at the, at the point of the development of it, that we could like have that experience so that we ourselves would be unified in our relationship with ourselves, and we'd carry that into our relationships with other people, where we wouldn't be having hungers for things from them. It's it's that put less strain on the interaction. So for now, so those, so talking about the sixth hub and really like what goes into like its period of development, a big part of this and I am repeating myself a little bit more, but I don't think that harms this process at all in terms of revisiting previous kind of notions. I think this stuff can be kind of revisited infinitely, honestly, at least how I'm experiencing it, is that what we're looking at, like, is like, what is this formation contributing to our lived experience and our sense of sort of our pervasive sense of self? And, and so this has to do, a lot of this is like also in addition to these like internal notions of intuition and ideation and like curiosity, inspiration, all those qualities. There's also the very practical matter of seeing others and being seen. And, this also harks back to this, like even the sort of, I guess, like, I'm not going to speak to that. It's just that this is like we attract what we show, as Miss Honey says. Um, And the more that we hide ourselves to belong in safety, the more the more that we crimp the showing of who we are. So even like that quality of existing and showing like the manifestation of a pattern of previous hubs is going to affect what we attract in terms of the people that feel like that kind of like simpatico with us. So part of what like the building up of the lower hubs is to build that confidence and self-awareness, like self-love that allows us to show ourselves as who we are so that in a sense we can like build the world around us to be people that reflect back on us and inspire us and like really unite with our integrity and our authenticity. So I'm going to read here. It's kind of short, but it's good, a little potent. This is Myth and Meaning, and this is under the themes. So we just did the basics, and now we're getting into themes, and this is the part of like understanding the hub. So stories connect us with transcendent, unifying, and humanizing concepts. When we laugh at a movie or laugh with millions of other people who respond to the same film, it's universal subject matter of love, grief, and joy. You know, one thing I want to bring up here too, because I don't know if this has been mentioned, is that very specifically in this period of time, it's in the initial development, but I'm going to point back to it, is that we're looking for inspiration in the world. Like we're looking for music, artists, like just like style, ways of living. It's like even I mean, it's really like looking for the material to create the notion of the life that you want to build in integrity, like in like that really resonates with who you are outside the context of like your family, your culture, whatever. It's like, what is the expression that is yours? And so there's this looking out and taking in, the different characters and types of media and people. And it's just, and I mean, there's probably, like in movies, cultures, whatever, it's like seeing different things. And this is part of that like experiential thing of especially like high school age, where you see that maturation into the later years of high school, where that like that exploration is just part of it, but that's talked about in the initial development. So I'll keep going. So the themes that unify us are told through myth and metaphor. In The Wizard of Oz, a story told within a dream, Dorothy and her friends learn that the things they want are already within them. You had the power all along. And they just needed to make the journey to reveal their capabilities so they could know and understand them. You already are everything you want to be, and your trials and tribulations help you grow by showing you who you are and what you're capable of. This is something where there's like interstices in this like, in the sense of it's like there's kind of an insight you can get from just kind of the notion. It's like, "Yeah, I had it all along." Um, but kind of the further contemplation of it has to do with understanding that the trials and tribulations, back to I think it was like Plato's notion that you like choose your circumstances that you're born into so that you can remember sort of why your soul wanted to incarnate on earth. So, whether that's, but just even that notion of finding, and there's this kind of completeness in this where the more, Parinama is written in self-actualization, and then in chapter 12, we get into like conscious creation that is like once we're like really developing a sense of connection with our authenticity and integrity, like we start creating out of a place where it's like highly inspired and activated and energized, but we've like sloughed off some of the adaptations that have like kind of been like sort of the wonky wheel in the shopping cart that keeps steering us out of this kind of like jet flow natural direction. So one of the things that that I've certainly found, and I recognize myself as not being alone in this, is that once you get into a very specific form of creation, and tell me if you recognize this, is that there is this like revelatory sense of like everything starts to make sense. And in writing this book, that was like a really profound aspect of breakthrough where I think if in reading the book, it's like very comprehensive to it in a certain way in terms of the extent of what it reaches into, and all of a sudden things made sense to me about my own life and things that had happened that helped me understand things, where I knew that I couldn't understand this notion if I hadn't had this experience. If I didn't have the well of empathy to draw from having had certain like particularly difficult experiences. And it's funny that one of the things that pops into my head is I spoke at a professional event many many years ago, and I remember I used to kind of be, when I like spoke on panels, I was just very candid, like, and if this type of thing, like people aren't, they do a lot of like canned stuff, and they're sort of like managing optics, and I'd speak honestly. And I remember this one event, when people kind of come up, they sort of line up afterwards because they want to talk to you. And by the way, like people would want to talk to me, and the other panelists, they'd, be like, a couple people, and I'd because it's like there's a thing. It's like when you're speaking from a place of authenticity, it's polarizing. So I didn't get to see the people who probably thought I was being like, you know, whatever, just like out of their taste. But I remember one woman said to me, and this surprised me, is she said, "I can tell you've been through some shit, huh?" It's like, it's like, it's fact. I don't think it can be that insightful if you haven't. I mean, one of my friends who had gone to a very like elite, I think I won't use her name because I haven't asked for her permission, but it's always stuck with me. It's story. This She told me this a long time ago. She went to this very elite, like Jewish seminary school, and with like the wealthiest wealthy people. And she said, yeah, the thing that was really marked of all these people who like really hadn't like had like any sort of like suffering was that they just weren't very curious. And I think one of the things about what I call suffering is it prompts discovery out of just necessity, because you need to, like it creates this need to figure out. Because it's like if you're kind of like in a room that is, like, has every sort of material comfort and towers of, like, bonbons and, masseuse and a cat sitting by your side or whatever, you're kinda like, "All right," like, but if you're in, like, a torture chamber, like, you're gonna be like, "How do I," like, you're kinda like, "Okay, what is this, and how do I get out of it?" Weird analogy. Or maybe torture chamber is wrong. Maybe if you're in a room and it's, like, filling with water and you're like, "I need to find," or, setting catching on fire or something or whatever. It's just that there's a necessitation of curiosity and problem solving and understanding and introspection, um, or at least there's a prompt that encourages it. It's really hard. And even in this process, okay, one more thing. Even in this process, I will say that one of the things that gets activated as, with the tangle, which is the circumstances impacting reflexes sort of necessitating like sort of rationalizing beliefs, creating reality, and then we project that into the world projects it back, and then it like goes into validating the reflex and the belief associated with it's like one of the things that happens is we loosen the tangle. There's moments of expansion, it's like, and they're infinite, like, by the way, but I'll just say that there's just these like, and they're blissy, like, it's very like being able to let go of these things. There's, it's not to say that there's, the pain of the work sometimes can be what it is, but there's this kind of feeling of sort of like opening. And if we get too attached to that feeling, when sort of the settling and sort of the next iteration comes, there can be sense of just like kind of, it's like, okay, wait, what? I thought I just set myself completely, like, liberated myself. And it's like, no, this is the nautilus shell. This is the ebb and flow. This is the expansion, recoil, integration. This is the, like, this is how this works. It's like, and it's like a fractal. It'll go on forever. So it's like, how do I do it? Good Lord, how do I do it? I can sail away on that. Okay, I'm gonna start reading. It's like, whew, my goodness. Let's see, do we want to ring the little bell? Da, me. Okay. Yeah, you're already everything you want to be, and your trials and tribulations help you to grow by showing you who you are and what you're capable of. Yeah. So really, and this is a really early, like when just talking about it, a lot of this is changing a relationship with suffering as well, is instituting curiosity instead of avoidance. Okay. A paradox of human life is that we're minuscule in comparison to the size of the universe, yet astonishing in our rarity, remarkable in our uniqueness. According to Joseph Campbell, myths and stories are our subconscious communicating with our conscious mind. His four functions of myth are mystical, cosmological, sociological, and pedagogical. And if I've lost you there, it seems like it's like this is some of the stuff where, like, I really wanted to be careful about not making this too like from the academic. I'm not an academic person. I don't know why this happens to me. But so mystical, cosmological, sociological, and pedagogical. So just like what those things are, the mystical, and this is like using myth to contemplate and understand, um, and how myth is like myth being used, or how would I put it? Yeah, yeah, how myth is used. So myth being used to like spiritual, like to like point to like spirituality, awe, like the sort of like I don't know, like m- spiritual like mystery, awe, fascination, kind of this sort of wonder. A lot of what is like very seventh hub. The cosmological is more like the space and the evolution of the universe. So myth being used to describe sort of like how did the universe come to be? Then we have sociological, which is like the development, structure, and functioning of society. So kind of the stories that like the stories that are sort of like the origin of like society, like right, life as we know it, or whatever the constructs. And then pedagogical, which is kind of like a catch-all, which is basically just like being used for education, for the development of like knowledge and skill. So the four functions of myth are mystical, cosmological, sociological, and pedagogical. So, okay, taste in movies and books can differ, but themes all remain the same: love, loss, betrayal, overcoming adversity, personal growth, and the hero's journey, which we'll get into next session. So, every person you meet was once a child who got scared, was teased, and experienced loss and or alienation at one point or another. If we enhance the lens of our curiosity and look, we see ourselves as interwoven with each other by the shared themes of the human experience. And I would add, and so one of the things that comes up is like, well, why don't we know that? Why don't we know that everyone was once a child that had to work through the development of these hubs? And what and I think one of the things I'll point to is the divisions: fear, guilt, shame, fear of like isolation, sadness, even. But shame being one of them. Shame probably being like the lead, kind of the idea of like, well, I'm the person who's like that. It's a singular experience to have been embarrassed or shamed. And one of or a very meaningful way that I came to understand how universal universal this is, it came out of my professional life, which was, I worked with thousands of people, thousands. Um, and it's the part that doesn't really get shown, but how working with supporting someone's development, at least the way that that I do it, to really make a significant like quantum leap in helping someone develop, there's always something related to these fears or shames or insecurities, or that really have like deep early roots, that by excavating, exploring, and working through them, that lead to breakthroughs. And it's really the practical end of how, Parinama and my, you know, my stewardship of it that comes from knowing that. And it was for me originally, it was really um like a healing, soothing thing to see that the very people that I had been comparing myself to and envying and feeling insignificant, or sort of like sort of like I had to like hide the fact of this, that, and the other thing, that these people were struggling with all of their own experiences, like the loss of a parent, the the cruel teasing by a sibling, living in a neighborhood with really mean kids. And it's not everyone. It's not everyone, but I'll say it's like it's, and I would say also is kind of a part two on the thing about like people who grew up without adversity in the capital A sense, when they have like lower A adversity, which is just kind of getting everything they ever wanted, is that there's this other kind of pain that arises, which is like the pain that has to do with feeling insignificant relative to those that came before them in this very particular way. It's like actually in the show Succession, which is brilliant. You see that kind of playing out, which is that playing out. And that's real, even when it's not like the Succession level, that people who came up with all of their material, and also there's like, yeah, actually, I'm not going to get too deep into that. But one of the things I will point to is that the early work of adversity, like that kind of malaise sort of thing, the low curiosity, creates like kind of low horsepower to solve, which becomes a kind of a painful thing. Like it's like a low energetic quotient to actually like solve for the pain. So it leads to a lot of, I've seen it lead to a lot of addiction. But the reason I bring this up is that it's like the saying, that be kind because everyone you meet is in a difficult battle. I think there's a reason that quote just, and nobody knows, it's like, it's misattributed to like everyone. It's one of those quotes I think is like, no, it's like Plato, but it wasn't Plato. Or yeah, like it's just, yeah, it's like it's given an author, I think, to sort of like give it some gravitas, but just, I mean, like let it stand on its own. The be kind for everyone you meet is in a difficult battle. And it's like but be kind to who? Okay. So I think there's sort of an assumption that it's like be kind to them, but I'm going to like take that and flip it. And I'm going to say be kind to yourself, to know that everyone is in a difficult battle. Be kind to yourself. Know that you're not alone. You're not alone. You're not alone in this. This is like, if you did not have any of like any work to do in this, I mean, it wouldn't, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get like sort of mystical and cosmological, but I don't know that like there are people that don't. I don't know why people would be like, if it's like incarnated or whatever. I mean, whether so, yeah, no, I'm not gonna go too much deeper into that. But yeah. Yeah. I mean, the thing is that, loss. there's no protection against loss. Like there's no financial, there's nothing you can do to be like, we're gonna buy our way to not lose people we love. Betrayal. And you could even say that in a way, for whatever it's worth, is that if the sense of your destiny and your ability to connect with your sense of destiny is sharpened by and awakened more quickly by the amount of adversity that you face. I don't want to like turn this into a thing where it's like, I mean, this can be a rabbit hole that can go into weird places, but just an encouragement of that activation. I mean, but that's not a really, I don't really want to get into this thing like everything happened for a reason. That's not going to happen here. Yeah, that's not going to happen here. I'm not going to rationalize cruelty. All I'm going to say is that, kind of a silver lining upside thing. That's all I'm going to say. It's like, yeah, I mean, like the thing where it's like, hey, your oppressors were your teachers. Fuck, they kind of are. They are, but like honestly, I'm actually just not going to create space for turning that into something where it's like, "Ow, isn't that turning your swords into plowshares or whatever?" No. Not yet. Not yet. No. First, we have to get angry. Yeah. First, we have to. Yeah. Okay. That's it. Uh huh. Okay. So we did it. Yay. Myth and meaning. And tomorrow? Usually, I think it's probably tomorrow. We'll do the hero's journey. And which is, So, and one of the things I'll point to with hero's journey is the actual exploration of this has different components to it. Typically, like there's a conflation between narrative arc and hero's journey, and there's components of this that I think for anyone who is like on this journey that will really resonate. Certainly did for me. Where like I was working as a sort of, I did an engagement in a company, and one of the things, I had someone come in who spoke and was like, who said that the hero's journey was sort of like the protagonist encounters an obstacle, overcomes the obstacle, and wins, and that's the hero's journey. Oh, good lord, that's just a fucking narrative arc. Like hero's journey is a very different passage. It's a passage. And we don't really have like rite of passage. And I think that actually is one of the things for, like white culture, is that there's just no markation. Like people used to say like getting a driver's license is this rite of passage. I mean, good lord. Like that's really, I mean, it's kind of like all you need to know, but there's no like the sort of thing of like passing thresholds. I mean, yes, you've like weddings and ceremony, but the internal like stepping through of actually like journeying, encountering challenges, finding things that are like uniquely within you is probably one of the things that it becomes a challenge for us, is that we don't have those thresholds that we pass through that help us kind of know that we're entering into different stages of our life, which is kind of why I think you can get like like infantilize, like like what, like where we have a lot of kind of, sort of arrested development because there's just no sort of checking and gating. So, yeah, I watched a movie last night, The Emerald Forest. It's from 1984. I'm just gonna leave it there. I recommend it. It's on YouTube for free. I saw it when I was a kid. It was left a huge impact on me, and I watched it again, and it different parallax style. I saw it differently because I was viewing it from a different context and different place in my time frame. But yeah, great. It was really good. Yeah. So Emerald Forest is good. Let's see. I think that's it. So anyway, thank you. Please like and comment and do anything if it feels right to you. I'll tell you, I'll answer any comment. Yeah, and seeing any interaction is really encouraging for me. So take that into consideration. Um, if you want to encourage me or not. But yeah, that's it for today. And thank you so much for coming along. I'm super grateful, and I can't wait until this is a discussion. It's my great anticipation is, the intention of these videos is to be a companion for the book. If you have the book and not having to read it alone, because it is daunting, it can also stand alone. If, there's that to a certain extent, it can stand alone. I think Parinoma for Beginners, the book, and then the actual individual discussion of the sections is probably ultimately sort of the trifecta of Parinoma. But anyway, I hope you, I hope you enjoyed this. And also any thoughts, please share. I really, truly welcome. And one thing I want to emphasize is I really welcome dissension. If I'm missing something, if it's like, please, I really am interested truly in expanding my own context and perception. So yeah, thank you. All right. So that's it for now. I'll see you on the other side. Bye for now.